I'm gonna show you how to make a game-ready AK-47 in Blender. This is episode 1, we're gonna talk about the hand grip first. Every tool and technique you're gonna see me using this video is in my new ebook, so you can check it out below. Here's the first thing you have to do. Go to Google search and type in AK-47 or whatever other gun you're trying to make. Then hit enter, and if you click on images, you're gonna get a whole bunch of pictures of an AK-47 in a bunch of different contexts. And you need to look for a picture which is going to give you a perfect side view of the AK-47. In this example right here, we can see the left side over here, and we can see the right side on top here. And this is good because we can see the dimensions and everything. You guys convinced me to start using this program called PureRef, and this is just something where you can copy paste images into and you can keep it on your screen so you can use this as references when you're modeling. I'm not going to show you where to get that, just Google PureRef and you'll be alright. And I want to get a few more pictures of the AK-47 where it's not just a side view, but maybe it's somebody holding the gun or something, and that way you can get a better idea of how thick it is. Here's a dude that made the AK-47. I wonder if he ever killed somebody with it. Now, once you got a couple of pictures of the AK-47, you can start working. You can always add more pictures, just go to Google and look for something else. At some point in the future, you're probably going to need some more close-ups of the tip of the barrel or the sights or whatever. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, I'm going to put my reference pictures over here in the corner. But I'm also going to copy this picture of the AK-47 from the side. I'm going to paste that into some image editing program like PaintNet. And that way I can save the image to my computer so I can use it as a background. It's going to act like a blueprint. Now we're going to get into Blender and we're going to place this PureRef window over here in the corner. I'm going to cover the outliner because let's be honest, nobody ever uses this fucking thing. So we can just put our references over here. If you have a second monitor, it's probably better to put it there. But if you don't, then you can just put it up here. Now we're going to go to side view. We're going to go to Shift A, image, reference, and you're going to load up the picture of your AK-47. Now it's placed in the background. You can also make it a little bit more transparent so it's a bit easier to look at. And once it's in the scene, just push it in the background. We're going to use this image to determine how long this is, how wide this is. We're going to measure the model based on this picture. Now delete the default cube, add in a new plane and align it with your view. Then we're going to place that little plane on top of this hand grip over here. And we're just going to scale it down and move some of the vertices around. We're going to use this plane to shape out the side profile of the hand grip. So we're going to have to add a loop cut over here, and we're going to have to add some extra geometry all over the place so we can shape this thing properly. And first I'm going to shape out the inner surface over here, and then I'll extrude out this part, which gives me a bevel, which makes the whole thing a bit smooth and round. I'll extrude this part down a couple of times. And at the end here, we're going to extrude an edge to make this little part that sticks out down here. Then we're going to use our loop tools to clean up this geometry a little bit. If you don't have your loop tools active, go up here to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and search for loop tools. And just check this box right here. Now the reason I activated my loop tools is because I want to select these two edge loops. And with W, I'll go to loop tools, space, and that's going to make all these edges equally long, and it's going to make the geometry look a little bit more clean. So now I can take this edge over here and I can extrude it out so it aligns with the blueprint in the back here. Then I'll extrude these edges down here. And the reason I didn't extrude this one is so I can fill this and keep a nice flow of faces over here so that when I subdivide this, it's going to look pretty nice. We're also going to extrude all this stuff over here in the front, fill this, and just move some vertices around until they roughly match the hand grip. Now notice how I designed this face loop so that it goes all the way from back here, it goes all the way around the hand grip, and then over here it ends, it doesn't go up here. This is gonna allow me to add a bevel over here once I have a subdivision surface modifier, if I'm gonna use a subdivision surface modifier. And it's just gonna give me better control over the mesh. And once we have a rough low poly shape for this thing, we're gonna have to extrude it out to give it some thickness. Now there's no way that I can tell from the references that I currently have exactly how thick this is supposed to be. And this can be really important because it can fuck up the entire workflow later on. So we're gonna go back to Google, and if you search something like AK-47 blueprint, you're gonna get pictures of the AK-47 from all different perspectives. For example, this picture right here shows me the AK from the side, from the top, and from the other side as well. Which means I can use this to determine the width of the hand grip. So I'm just gonna copy that. I'm gonna paste it onto a new canvas in PaintNet. And currently it's super thin, so first of all I'm going to invert the colors on this. And I'm going to separate all these perspectives so I can save them as separate images. And that way I'll be able to use them in Blender to give me all the different perspectives of the gun. Now I need to replace the background image with my blueprint because I can no longer use this one because it's not going to perfectly align with the blueprint. I'm going to move this out of the way. Shift A, image, reference, and we're going to load up the other pictures. So this is one blueprint right here. I'm going to align that with the hand grip that I already made so it matches approximately. And once I place that in the background, I'm also going to add in my top image, which is the most important one here. Now it's very important that the top image shows me the same scale as the right side or the left side image. Right now when I added the top image, it doesn't have the same length as the other picture, so it's going to completely fuck up my model. So to fix that, I'm going to add a little bit of transparency on both of these pictures so I can see them better. Then I'm going to place the tip of the bayonet at the tip of the other bayonet in the other picture. I'll place the 3D cursor at the tip right there. Then I'll set the pivot point to the 3D cursor. And with this top image selected, I can now scale it from this exact point, which means it won't move from this point over here, but it's just gonna get bigger. And once I have that in place, I can scale this up and align the backs of the buttstock. And that way I can make sure that this is the exact same scale that I'm looking at here. Now we can just rotate this around the Y-axis and we can push it down so that from top view we have a perfect reference. Now based on the references that we have from before, you can tell that the hand grip is supposed to be thinner than the receiver. And you can also tell that the top of the hand grip is a bit wider than the rest of the hand grip. So to make things simpler, first of all, we're going to delete one entire side of this hand grip. Then we're going to add a mirror modifier to the hand grip. And that way we can easily control the thickness by just moving one side of the geometry. And now from top view, we're going to make this a little bit thinner than the receiver. The top part of the hand grip is probably supposed to be somewhere around here, which means the lower part is supposed to be around here. Now the new reference that I'm using shows me a slightly different shape, so I'm going to have to adjust this hand grip to that shape. So I'm just going to move some of the geometry around a little bit to correct this. This needs to be a straight cut, but it has to sit at a bit of an angle because this is not perfectly straight. So I'm going to use my knife tool. I'll click up here, then I'll pull it down here, and I'll press C so I can cut through. And once I click down here, I'll hit enter, and that's going to give me a loop cut straight through this entire shape. Then I'll just cut off the part in the front, and later when I apply my mirror modifier, I'll be able to grid fill this with clean geometry. We're also going to move some of these vertices into place down here. We're also going to have to straighten out this shit on top, so once again, K, click here, C to cut through, then click over here, then hit enter, and delete all this shit at the top, and once again, we're going to fill that in with a grid fill afterwards. I think this line in the blueprint over here shows us where the hand grip is supposed to be thicker. In the reference, this is this line over here. That's what I'm thinking right now. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But who gives a fuck, as long as it looks good. So we're going to move this geometry aside, and I'm just going to add another loop cut from here to over here with C to cut through. And then I can take this whole surface on the side over here, extrude, right click and Alt S to push it outwards a little bit. We're still going to add some subdivision surface to this to control the shape a little bit better, but this is how we need to shape the geometry. Now with Control 1 we can add some subdivision surface. And once we have the subdivision surface, we're probably going to have to take this entire edge loop on the outside here and slide it with double G inwards a little bit to make this shape more round. We can also apply the mirror modifier now so we can fill in this other shit. And the easiest way to fill this is if we disable the subdivision for a second. We're going to select these two edge loops over here, W, bridge edge loops in edge select mode. Then just add a loop cut down the middle and merge vertices by distance. My shortcut for that is Shift W, but if you don't have a shortcut for that, go up here to Mesh, merge by distance, and that's going to turn all the vertices which are in the same place into one single vertex. Now we can select this edge loop over here, face, grid fill, and you might have to adjust the span or the offset a little bit to make this align perfectly, but it's gonna give you a clean quad only filling up here. Now back to subdivision surface, we're going to select all these edge loops over here, as well as this edge loop up here. And the reason we're doing that is so we can go to Control B to add a small bevel here. We're gonna set the shape to 1 and the number of segments has to be 2. This way this is going to control how round this part is because of the subdivision surface. Obviously this is supposed to be quite sharp. Maybe we want the bevel to be a little bit thicker, so I'm going to make mine something like this. Because of the bevel, I got some fucked up overlapping on my geometry over here, so I'll select this surface, I'll scale it down a little bit so I don't have any overlapping on the side. And I'm gonna have to do the same thing back here. Now, I don't know if this is supposed to be this round or a little bit flatter, but I kind of like how it looks if I add loop cuts over here, and then I get rid of this loop cut in here. It just makes this surface a little bit more flat, and I think it looks a bit better. It doesn't matter, these are tiny details, it don't matter. No one's gonna shoot you in the head for not doing this correctly. Just do whatever looks best for your purpose. Now, the subdivision surface makes this shape look a lot nicer than before, but it also added a whole bunch of geometry to the shape. So when we applied the subdivision surface modifier, we're gonna have to remove some of the edge loops, we're gonna have to dissolve some of the geometry, because otherwise we're just gonna have way too many polygons. So to do that, you can just use Alt right click or Shift Alt right click to select a bunch of edge loops like this, then press X, dissolve edges, and try to select the ones which you can remove without making a visible difference on the mesh. For example, I can easily remove these edge loops, and it's still gonna look more or less the same. I can also get rid of this one, and maybe this one up here, and I definitely don't need this many horizontal edge loops on the hand grip. Now, the subdivision surface modifier helped us make this mesh a little bit smoother and rounder. It just reshaped it a little bit. But then I removed some geometry because I don't want to have too much geometry. So I kind of tried to get a balance between having a nice smooth and round shape, but not having too much geometry to fuck up the whole thing. Obviously, if you want to, you can add more subdivision surface to this if you want to make it look nicer, but you don't have to do that. It's up to you how many polygons you're trying to have on this. Anyway, adding more subdivision is not going to change the look of this too much. This is what it looks like with one level of subdivision at the moment, and this is what it looks like with no subdivision. So there's only a slight difference in the shading, and I think for a game, it's probably not even worth it. Now we gotta texture this thing. So there's gonna be 4 things that we have to do for this. First things first, we're gonna have to UV unwrap this. Then we're gonna have to find a wood texture. Then we're going to have to create this knurling on the side, and finally we're gonna have to texture paint some of this bullshit, whatever this says on the top here. So let's start by UV unwrapping this. Switch over to the shading workspace, zoom in on this, and add a new material. We're gonna name this material UV test, and in this new material we're gonna add a new image texture node. In the image texture node, click on new, name that UV grid, set the resolution to 2048 by 2048, and set the generated type to UV grid. After you generate that, plug the color into the base color of the principal node, and now this is gonna be visible on the hand grip. At the moment we can see our UV map is completely fucked because we have all this stretching and distortion, so we're gonna fix that by UV unwrapping it properly. The reason for this UV grid is so we can see if we unwrap this correctly or not. So first of all, we're going to separate these flat surfaces on the top and the bottom. We're going to mark the edge loops around those, and we're also gonna separate them with an extra edge loop over here. Then we're gonna press Ctrl E, mark seam, and that'll take care of that. Now we still have this part at the bottom down here. The best way to unwrap this would to be split it into two sides. Unwrap the side on the left and unwrap the side on the right. But the problem is we can't do that because we don't have a loop gun in the middle which we can cut. So obviously we can just add a loop cut. Deselect all this stuff at the top of that loop cut because we don't want to mark that as a seam. Then Ctrl E, mark seam, select everything, U, unwrap, and you can see the UV map looks pretty good on this. Now we just have to replace this UV grid with a wood texture. So let's go to Google. In a new tab, search for textures.com. And in the PBR materials section, we're gonna look for some wood. You can find a wood various category over here, and here you got a whole bunch of different types of wood. Now here's what the hand grip looks like, and if we scroll down a little bit, we can find a couple of examples of something similar. For example, this material right here looks pretty similar to the material on the hand grip. This might be a little bit better because it's not gonna have the little tiny lines as the other texture, so we might also be able to use this on the buttstock. Now it looks like the buttstock and the hand grip are the same texture, but the buttstock, unlike the hand grip, has wood grain on it. You can see some of the lines over here. So we need to find a texture which also has that. So I think the best thing to do would be to use a combination of a nice clean wood like this and something a bit more rough like this one over here. And to do that, I'm going to download the color texture from this one over here. And by the way, I can change the color. It's not going to be this red. Don't worry about it. And I'm going to download the normal map and the roughness map from this other texture over here. Now the resolution of this red wood texture was pretty low. We can also fix that. So here's a 2000 IQ trick to fix that. You're gonna go to this website called upscale.media by pixelbin.io. There's a bunch of these types of websites, they're all the same shit. Most of them are free to use and they're not even paying you to say this. And this website will allow you to take a low resolution image and turn it into a high resolution image. So if you just have a shitty texture, you can turn it into a pretty nice texture. It says it uses some AI to make it a bit sharper and to generate some new stuff. I don't know if it's really AI or what it is. But anyway, it just gives you some nice high quality textures, which is pretty useful because sometimes it's pretty hard to find high resolution images. So click over here on upload image, then load your image in here, and you're gonna have to wait a couple of seconds. Once the processing is finished, you can choose some options. By default, the upscale factor is 2, which means if you put in a 512 by 512 image, you're gonna get out a 1024 by 1024 image. You can also change that to 4 times. There's another option which lets you enhance the quality. I don't know what it does. And you can also preview the close-ups of this to see what this looks like. I don't really give a shit about these details, so I'm just gonna download the image because I want 1024. Now we're going to apply this material to the hand grip. So first of all, we're gonna take this UV test material, we're gonna click on this little shield, so that way when we remove it from this object, it's not going to disappear. We're still gonna have that material somewhere. And that's gonna let us use it on other objects later on. Now create a new material called hand grip, and go to Shift A, image texture node, and open up the texture that we just downloaded. When you plug that into base color, you're gonna see the texture on your hand grip. Right now it looks like shit because it's not rotated properly, but an easy way to fix that is you can use your node wrangler. So go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, clear the search, and in the search box type in Node Wrangler. Just check this add-on, and once you do that, you can select the image texture node, press Ctrl T. That's gonna give you some new nodes which you can use to map the image. So in the rotation area of this mapping node, we're gonna set the Z rotation to 90 degrees, or you can adjust it even further manually to just make these lines look a little bit better. Once we have that, we're going to add another image texture node, and we're going to open up the other texture maps which we downloaded a second ago. Here we have a roughness map, so we have to set that to non-color, plug that into roughness. That's gonna control the roughness of our texture a little bit better. Then lastly, we're gonna add a normal map, and you can do that by just clicking and dragging it from the downloads folder. Also set that to non-color, add a normal map node, run the color through the normal map node, and plug that shit into normal in the principal node. Now we also have a little normal map on this texture, which looks pretty good. Now I told you guys you can control the color of this texture. Right now it's a little bit too red. Maybe you like this, but probably want to make this a little bit more brown to give it the classic AK color. So to do that, just move these color nodes to the side, add a hue saturation value node, Place that in between these two nodes, and you can control the hue to give this a different color. For example, I'm going to set the hue to 0.53 or maybe 0.52, and that's going to make this a bit more brown. You can also control the value to make it darker if you want to, but now we're just splitting hairs. It's up to you what you want to do with this next. A better way to do this would probably be to change the texture in an external program, because otherwise we're going to have to add this node to every single material. For example, when we have the hand grip or the buttstock, we're also going to have to add this extra node here. If we change the image itself, then we don't have to add this extra node. So I'm going to do that instead in PaintNet. I'm going to open up this image. I'll go to Adjustments, Hue Saturation. I'll change the hue by giving it a value of 10 or 11 or 12. Then reduce the lightness a little bit to make it a bit darker. Save this image, okay? And in Blender, we're just going to refresh this. Now you can get rid of the saturation nodes and plug this into base color. I just wanted to show you guys that you can use the saturation node. It's pretty useful sometimes. Now we need two more little details on this hand grip to make it perfect. First of all, we're going to have to add this knurling as a normal map here. So to do that, let's first create an area onto which we're going to apply this knurling. As you can see, it's defined by perfectly straight lines. It goes all the way from down here to up here. So we're going to select this face, Control Shift right click on this face, and make sure to do that on both sides of the object. For example, we're going to move these edges around a little bit. This is something we probably should have thought about a little bit earlier, because now it's going to fuck up our UV map a little bit. But it doesn't matter too much because we can always just UV unwrap it again. Just to keep things clean, I'm also going to G-stretch these vertical edge loops right here. So W, Loop Tools, G-stretch, Project, and now this looks pretty good. I'm going to select all the edges around these surfaces that I just created. I'll mark them as seams, and I'm once again going to UV unwrap everything. And now we're going to need a normal map for this knurling. I'm gonna be an asshole and I'm not gonna show you how to do that in this video, because I already have a tutorial that shows you how to make knurling in Blender. Go watch that video really quick. It's super simple. You're basically just modeling the knurling and making it as a normal map. Now we're going to apply that knurling to this surface alone. So with these two surfaces selected, you're going to create a new material slot. You're going to load the same hand grip material here, and then you're going to click on this little duplicate shit over here, and that's going to create a new version of this same material. It just duplicated it. We're going to rename this to hand grip knurling, and in this new material we're going to load in our knurling normal map, which we created in the other tutorial. I already have a normal map here from before, so I'm going to have to combine that with a normal map of the knurling. This is the first normal map for the wood texture. I'm going to bring this one over here. I'll set that to non-color, then add a new node which is called mix color, plug the knurling normal map into color A, and plug the wood normal map into color B. Then take the result and put that into the color of the normal map node, and you're gonna have to assign this material to this object. Once you assign this, you're gonna see the knurling pattern on this part of the object. We're gonna select the knurling texture and add a node wrangler, and that way we can increase the scale. We're gonna set the scale to something like 5 on all axes, and that's gonna give us the right size for this knurling. You can use the factor to control how strong this knurling is going to be. But we're also going to need an extra little edge over here, so we're gonna slightly inset both of these surfaces. And we're going to select these new tiny little face loops around here. We're going to apply the initial hand grip material that we had from before. Clear the outer seams around this area by selecting them. Press Ctrl E, clear seam. Now we can add a loop cut to the middle of these little face loops. Select that new loop cut and just use Alt S to push it inwards a little bit. Then we're going to select all these edges around this little face loop. Ctrl E, mark sharp, and in the object data properties, you're gonna go to normals, click on auto smooth, and just crank that shit all the way up. Now we have a tiny little border, but you could have also made this with a normal map. And now we're gonna have to texture paint this shitty little text up here. So to do that, select the hand grip and go to the first hand grip material. Add a new image texture node. Generate a new image. We're gonna name that hand grip diffuse. Set the resolution to whatever you want. I'm gonna go 2048, but you can go less than that. Generated type should be blank, and then click OK. Select this node, go over to the render properties and switch the render engine to cycles. Then find the bake menu down here. Set the bake type to diffuse, and make sure you uncheck direct and indirect. Now load up this hand grip diffuse image which we just generated in this node. Currently it's a black image, but once we select this, we select the node and click bake, and after a few minutes you're gonna get your baked texture right here. The reason that we did this is so that we now have a unique texture for this hand grip. It's no longer just a wood image that we downloaded, because we're gonna have to use that wood texture for something else, right? So now we have a specific hand grip diffuse texture. We're gonna replace the old texture with this new texture by plugging that into the base color. And now in the texture painting workspace, we're gonna be able to paint over this. Sometimes Blender is not gonna let you paint shit in 3D space. It seems like there's a problem. The reason for this is that your normals are inverted. So to fix that, go to edit mode, Shift N to recalculate the normals. Now you can go back to texture paint and you can paint whatever you want. So give me my reference image right here. I'm gonna go to side view, and I need a smaller brush for this, so I'm gonna go with something like 16. And I'm also going to adjust the fall off so it's not so smooth. Now I can use this little brush to create whatever this says over here. I'm going to zoom in over here, and we're going to start writing out the letters. It says AM6072. We're gonna give this a little underline, and this makes our hand grip ready to go. What do you think how many people were killed by the AK-47 in all time? In the next episode, we're going to model the receiver, so the upper part, the metal part of this gun. Drop your questions in the comment section below. Make sure to check out my ebook, because everything that I ever use for modeling in Blender is in that fucking ebook, and I'm also gonna continue to add more stuff to that ebook over time. Also check out my Patreon page. You can find some more modeling courses in there, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next part.